Hi, my name is Zach, and Xenoblade Chronicles was my favorite game of all time. Everything about the game, from its characters to its world, story, and gameplay all resonated with me and compounded into an experience that was formative to my development as a young adult when I played it nearly 8 years ago. Not only was it a JRPG with a unique real-time MMO-style battle system, identifiable world, stellar writing, and natural characters, but it was overly ambitious for its time, with sprawling open areas, each filled with iconic environments and music that fit perfectly with each setting. It set itself apart from many games of its type, with a story that took itself much more seriously than many of its contemporaries, characters rooted in relatable and empathetic tales of loss, revenge, love, and heartbreak, and a plot that climaxed into something that displayed life lessons without it feeling forced or baked in. This game knew how to strike a perfect balance between a story with a serious tone and a world that was mystical and fantasy-driven. It was my favorite game of all time. The reason? Well, I'm happy to report the reason for that is, well, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is now my favorite game of all time. All I could have ever wanted from an HD port of Xenoblade was a game that looked better and fully realized the world and characters that I had been enamored with in my adolescence. When I stared out at Valak Mountain at nighttime when I played this game initially on my Wii, I was stunned by how beautiful the aesthetic was, but one of the first thoughts that came to my mind was, wow, I wonder if I would ever be able to see this in HD. Needless to say, they gave me that. But on top of the HD remaster of this game, they gave me more. Much more than I could have ever asked for. So now that you know about me and my stance on this game, I'll answer your question. Why should you buy Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition? The answer lies in two simple words: accessibility and simplicity. One of the main criticisms of the original Xenoblade is a valid one, and it's how difficult it was for many people who are unfamiliar with JRPGs to get into it. Its quest system was convoluted, some bosses were messy, and its combat was so strange that it's easy to see how it could scare off a lot of new, more inexperienced players. This version of Xenoblade offers many quality of life changes that make this game accessible to anyone and everyone. A more streamlined quest tracking system allows for anyone to track any quest easily and shaves dozens of hours off of playtime. A number of boss fights and areas that people have had issues with are tweaked for those who may have had problems in the past, such as the fight with Zord in the Ether Mine or Metalface on Sword Valley. Even those who may have had trouble with Definitive Edition have options to play it with the introduction of Casual and Expert mode. The former essentially makes the agility stat worthless and fills the party gauge twice as fast. The latter allows you to de-level your characters so you can stay the same level as the events in the story. Definitive Edition also has the sleekest and easiest to follow user interface of any game in the series. You have a visible health bar for characters, smaller text size, and notifications when you're correctly positioned for a critical attack on an enemy. Not only do these changes assist new players in acclimating to the gameplay and combat, but they also give more room for the environments to shine without being cluttered by huge text fonts and giant UIs. On top of this are a number of small changes that make this game easier and better for everyone. The indicator for when you're positioned correctly for a critical attack on an enemy is a godsend. The inclusion of fashion gear allows anyone to keep a consistent or more fitting appearance for their characters without having to sacrifice their stats. So why do I think everyone should buy this game? Well, that's because anyone's fears of combat or gameplay can be completely removed with these quality of life changes, and this game's story and characters alone are worth experiencing for yourself no matter what type of games you play. The updated character models, environments, and textures are all fantastic too. Looking at Shulk's tear-filled eyes, Dunvan's angered expressions, and Ryan's aloof mannerisms are all emotive and finally match the quality and passion of the voice acting and writing. There's a level of natural fluidity in its narrative that just carries Xenoblade throughout its adventure. Everything that happens is essential to the plot, and you're constantly being given something that can keep you hooked in for several hours of gameplay. From the charming characters to the stark emotional plot moments and the fantastically crafted and well-designed areas, there's always something new that will help you stay engaged and interested. Xenoblade is not only a gem for its complex gameplay systems and fantastic world, it has one of the most fantastic stories in any video game, period. While on the surface, it is a story about explorers traversing the body of a dead titan in order to seek revenge, what lies underneath is a complex narrative that holds a number of existential and philosophical themes. What awaits you is one of the most subtle, nuanced, and well-written games in general. No pieces of media ever. Now, if you're hoping for a review on Future Connected, that will be its own separate video from this, as I feel it constitutes its own experience and needs to be critiqued through a completely different lens than what I'm doing here. Now, I'm always willing to tell you guys that Xenoblade is my favorite game of all time, but I have yet to tell you why it is my favorite game of all time. That's why I'm kindly asking any of you who have not played Xenoblade Chronicles before to please click away from this video. Just go out and buy it now. I know it's odd that I'm asking this. The rest of this video will essentially be me gushing about why I find this game to be a masterpiece and what I love about it, and as a result, I will be spoiling everything. This game's plot depends on going in blind, and spoiling any of it for yourself would be a massive disservice, and I don't want to rob anyone of experiencing this game's story and characters for the first time. With that said, let's get into this retrospective / fangasm over Xenoblade Chronicles. Show, don't tell. If any of you remember my infamous 2017 review of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I openly harped on this basic narrative device as being the main reason that Xenoblade stands out as a game to me, and that still holds up. The characters' personalities were shown to us through their actions and expressions, and the game only delved into exposition whenever it felt necessary, and it always did it in a tactful manner. For example, the game often used Ryan, a character who's often aloof to complex terms because of his boneheaded personality, as a vehicle to explain terms and ideas that a typical player wouldn't understand. Take this example of when Egil describes the use of starvation tactics, and Dunban explains it purely because he sees Ryan doesn't understand.
Tell me, boy, are you familiar with the concept of starvation tactics?
Of course.
A military strategy in which you cut the supply lines and starve out the enemy.
There are two big things to take away there that make this a masterful means of expounding exposition. First, they gave context to why they had to explain something before they did it. By having Ryan not understand Dunban, a man who has fought in wars and is a masterful tactician, explain the situation, gives it a reason for them to break convention and explain this to the audience. In this example, Ryan acts as a vehicle for us to learn something new. Second, they only showed us Ryan's discomfort as an obvious means of displaying that he didn't understand. They could have had him say something, but instead he displayed it with his actions, something that once again helps build this character in a subtle way. On a side note, I just spent all of that time focusing on one tiny non-critical moment in the story that just helped explain a general term used in military tactics, so just as a warning, that's going to be the vibe of this video. I also talked about one of this game's most beloved scenes in that video, the one of Fiora's death, and I still believe that this scene represents everything that is fantastic about this game. It has amazing voice acting with Adam Howden's anguished cries over the tragedy that transpires. It has a stunning soundtrack that fits perfectly in sync with the events that happen, as if the orchestrated cues were built perfectly to fit the pacing of each scene. It has the shock factor and lasting narrative impact of them killing off a plot-critical character so early on as a statement that this game will break convention and easily throw you for a loop. All of that culminates into a scene that hooked me and is one of the most well-executed moments in video games.
Fiora!
I also still firmly believe that it's not about the content of Xenoblade's story that makes it stand out, but the way that it is presented. If you gave us Xenoblade's story on a spreadsheet with bullet points describing the events that happen, it wouldn't look all that special. It's instead about how its story is shown to us that makes it stellar. So many moments that I love about this game's story are subtle, effective, and masterful means of storytelling. Here are a number of examples just off the top of my head. Them not having Metalface speak at the beginning of the game, because it would give away his identity as Mumkar, and that's why hearing his voice in nearly 15 hours of gameplay later, when his character has left our minds, makes the twist of who he is even more clever, showing us early on that the Monado can't hurt Homs is effective foreshadowing to the reason why it can't hurt Face Mechon, because their Homs transformed into Mechon. Also, it's a very smart plan by Zanza to make it so that his, own weapon can't harm himself. When Shulk and Ryan say what's born from the Bionis returns to the Bionis in Tephra Cave, it's a fantastic way to foreshadow Zanza's endgame goal of making all life serve him for his reawakening and to remember who he is. Dixon overseeing Shulk most of his life makes sense when you realize that he was the one who was grooming him to be the next vessel for Zanza. When Ryan tells Shulk in the Ether Mine that he doesn't have to go change the future alone, it foreshadows him saving a Tharon later on.
An ether river. You know what? That sword lets you see the future. All that power, and you still keep getting it wrong.
Better to use my brain than my fists.
Shulk, I may rush in head first, but at least my head's useful for something.
Okay, I get the idea.
I ain't done yet. You're useless on your own, Shulk. That's why we're here.
Ryan,
Next time you have a vision, you tell us. We bear the burden together as a team. You have a vision you don't like, we'll change the future together. Got it?
But this isn't supposed to happen! Atharon!
Gado, I'll see you before long.
That was close. You want to hurry up? My arm's about ready to drop off.
Thank you.
Save the thanks for Shulk and his vision. As soon as I saw an ether river, I knew this had to be the place.
Another fantastic moment. Things like the parallel between Shulk and Egil also remain a strong story dynamic. Both of them are blinded by their lust for revenge and use violence and bloodshed as a means of attempting to reach a twisted goal for peace. The fact that both Zanza and Egil's goals and methods are the same as well, Egil takes Homs and turns them into Face Mechon, whereas Zanza takes Hyentia and turns them into Telethia. Both wish to achieve the destruction of the world that they do not live on, and the subsequent creation of it in their vision. This makes them both two sides of the same coin, much like the Bionis and Mechonis themselves. And the pure irony that Egil doesn't see that he's become what he hates When he aims to destroy the Bionis, on top of his realization of his problematic methods, easily makes him one of the best written villains in video games. I'm not lying. Also, Egil mirroring both Zanza and Shulk in his motivations and goals is brilliant, because up until the point that he dies, he believes Zanza and Shulk are the same person. So of course he would mirror both of them in what he does as a result of becoming what he hates. To finish this part off, one of the things I love about this game the most is its endgame goal of save the world and fight God. It doesn't feel so outlandish or come out of nowhere because it's intrinsically tied to the game's general themes from the beginning. One of the main central themes of the game revolves around battling your fate and having the will to change the future. Every major plot point revolves around this idea. So when the game's God essentially tells our party that their future is dictated by him and it lies in his hands, of course denying this and making a future without gods makes sense. The game's themes are intrinsically tied to the commentary of religion and fate versus free will, but that's a topic I'll be saving for a little later. There are a number of life lessons that the game displays to you constantly and that are always shown through the character's actions. One of the key ones is that bloodshed and violence only beget more bloodshed and violence. Shulk quickly understands this after Prison Island, when he comes to terms with the fact that killing Metalface won't change anything, and blind revenge no longer remains the answer. There's also the idea of the demonization of the other. We see this primarily in American political discourse, but I won't get into that here. Throughout the beginning of the game, Shulk vows to mow down countless Mechon in his quest for revenge against Fiora's killers. But he soon realizes that Faced Mechon and Machina are people, just like they were. They had lives and families, and were in fact just like them. It's a strong character building moment for him. As I mentioned before, one of the primary themes in this game is its argument of fate versus free will. The idea of free will stems from a world without God philosophy, as if a God exists, then they would predetermine every event and all that we do would be dictated by them. This is one of Zanza's key messages at the end of the game. The characters actively changing the future are both them and the creators of the game defying a world predestined by God to have outcomes of pointless violence and loss. This game is strikingly liberal in its themes of carving your own path in destiny and its promotions of agnosticism and complex philosophical thought. I'll get into this game's philosophical themes later on too, so keep these things in mind. This goes into a mindless and dumb complaint I hear from people that has to do with how much this cast talks about changing the future, and it's beat to death. My response? Of course it's beat to death. It's a central point of the game's philosophical narrative and underlying plot. Their constant discussion of changing the future leads our cast to realize that they don't need a god who can determine what happens to them. It serves a purpose to help us drive the themes that this game holds throughout. Each character in this game has complex emotions and are built throughout the story. We aren't told of their personality traits, we are instead shown them. That makes it so that when these characters begin to act out of character, we question why, and the reasons hit us all the harder. Take Dunban, for example. He always remains composed throughout the entire adventure. He's always the rock of the party. When Fiora dies in the Mechon invasion, he's there to comfort Shulk. When the party finds her on Prison Island, he's there to comfort the team. When Shulk wants to blindly rush in to save Melia in the High Antia tomb, he keeps the party grounded. Despite the worst things happening, he is a voice of reason.
Wondering what?
You saw how Fiora acted. It was like she didn't even recognize us.
Yes, it's unsettling. But Shulk, don't get me wrong. I'm not sad. Even if she doesn't recognize me, I'm glad to know she's alive.
Dunban...
You see, Fiora was born many years after me. And, not long afterwards, we lost our father to a Mechon. It was left to me to protect and raise her, almost like a father.
I was always jealous that she had you as her brother.
Ah yes. You and Fiora used to be Inseparable?
Yeah.
I need to tell you something. I always thought if Fiora were to be with anyone, it should be you.
What? But Ryan hangs out with her just as much as me.
Yeah, he does. But Fiora doesn't like him in that way.
Oh. I see.
He's a nice guy. Reminds me of myself when I was his age. All reckless and hot-headed. Probably why he's not right for her. Listen, Shulk.
Yes?
A lost life can never be returned. But she's alive. It doesn't matter that she's lost her memory.
Yeah. I guess you're right.
Fiora and I have spent our entire lives together. The memory of that can't have disappeared completely. It's up to us. We have to help her remember. Help me, Shulk. Help me get her back.
I'm fine, but... you...
I will shed no tears.
Huh?
A year ago, I felt the same sense of deep loss that I do now.
The Battle of Sword Valley.
After that battle, many of my friends did not make it home. While I was being brought here on that stretcher, they were all I thought about. But I decided I would not cry. Everyone who died in that war had something they wanted to protect. Family, friends, loved ones, their home. So they fought to protect them. And we won. No matter how painful, no matter how hard, it's nothing to be sad about. I decided that there and then.
Dunban.
Shulk, Fiora would tell you the same thing. She wanted to protect us. Or rather, she wanted to protect you. And you're alive now. So, I will not cry.
Okay.
Remember the gift of life that Fiora gave you, and treasure it.
I can't say that I understand, but I hope to, someday.
That's why him breaking down on Sword Valley and nearly killing Mumkar is such a profound moment in his character. One of his best friends, who he had thought had been dead for years, ends up being alive and is responsible for the deaths of his family, friends, and the destruction of his home. Of course he would lose his shit at that point.
Get out of my way, Shulk!
It's Mumkar! He's not a Mechon!
Have you forgotten everything he's done? Where is your killer instinct? Now is the time!
I hate him, Dunban! For what he did to Fiora and the Emperor! So of course I want to get my revenge!
Shulk.
Also, he and Mumkar fighting on Sword Valley, the same place that they fought alongside one another years ago, absolutely brilliant. Shulk, being the one to stop him, makes the dynamic even more powerful. What does Dunban say to Shulk after the Emperor dies? A lost life can never be returned. And Shulk makes him live up to what he preaches, even in the toughest moments. There's Sharla, who visibly reacts to Mumkar's taunting on Sword Valley because she remains the only party member who has still lost someone and knows not of their whereabouts. There's Ryan, who exposes his crippling insecurity of not being able to protect Shulk as Shulk grows stronger than him with each passing moment.
But at least you got out safe.
What is it?
Look at me. I'm useless. Can't even keep a promise. I promised Fiora I'd look after Shulk. Stupid.
You promised to protect the guy who protects you. Am I missing something?
In the old days, Shulk was kind of frail. You know, like a little bunniv that gets bossed around by the other colony animals. It was me who used to be there, to save him. That's why I promised Fiora. But now look at me.
Ryan.
He's stronger now. And not just because he's got the Monado. I've done all I can to help him. He doesn't need me.
There's Melia, who loses everyone that she loves and yet remains composure and attempts to fulfill her legacy as a ruler. Ricky, even Ricky, proves himself at some point to be a caring father figure who ends up even giving Dunban advice.
Ricky not understand Dun.
Don't try to hide it. You realized Melia was lagging behind. She would never admit how tired she was. That's the real reason you ask.
Fiora develops her own securities about her new Frankenstein robotic body and whether Shulk or her family and friends will still love her. Then there's Shulk, a character with so many complexities that I had to rewrite this part twice in order to articulate everything about him. First, his lust for revenge clouds his judgment through most of the game. Many consider this to be a flaw in his character, but I like to consider it Zanza's influence over Shulk. It's essentially Zanza egging Shulk on in order for him to break the shackles and release him from Prison Island. Zanza showed him Fiora's death twice before it happened. That alone would be enough to break someone. But then he shows him Prison Island, and he only shows him what he wants him to see. He shows him Melia, the Emperor, and him dealing a blow to Metalface. And if you were constantly being flashed images like that in your mind, it would likely alter your personality too. Throughout the game, Shulk is fighting this internal battle with Zanza, who's trying to take over in order to have his wishes fulfilled. Shulk's ultimate desire for peace is also something I love because it's obvious as to why he wants peace, but it's so easy to miss that it remains subtle. I always go back to that scene with him and Fiora at the park, where she wishes that every day would be calm and peaceful.
It's so peaceful. You know, Shulk, I hope every day can be like this, always.
He wants peace because she wants peace, and he loves her. His main driving force throughout the game is his love for Fiora and desire to live in peace with her, and I love it. Also, the Breeze Feels Good line being at the end too, showing that they had attained their goal for peace, is amazing. Also, this game does foreshadowing so well. Right after Fiora wishes for peace in the park, the colony defense systems activate, foreshadowing that something will be coming to the colony soon. I fucking love this game. You have to understand that even as I'm writing this, I'm finding new things to go back and appreciate about this game's story and how it's told to us. It really is a testament to how well it holds up, and as a result, I'm sure I'm missing some things, honestly. I've beaten this game's story to death. It's good. You get it. That's why I want to move on to the design of the game and how amazing it is. While you travel around the Bionis and Mechonis, you quickly realize that the world's interconnected, as it's the body of two large titans you're traversing. You get to constantly see landmarks of places you'll soon be able to explore and that you've once gone to the entire game, giving you a fantastic feeling of progression while also making the world feel alive. As soon as you enter the Bionis leg, you see the Mechonis looming over you with Sword Valley in the distance, and Air at the Sea you can see Prison Island hanging over you at all times. At Mechonis Core you can see the central factory below you. It all feels connected, and the biomes of these titans obviously make a lot of sense in context too. Valak Mountain being a steep and cold area makes sense because it's on the arm of the Bionis. The Fallen Arm being a beachfront makes sense because it's floating in the ocean. On top of this, the sheer versatility and variety of the game's environments are insane too. You have rusted mechanical factories, deep murky swamps, large open fields, high-tech civilizations, lush jungles, cavernous abandoned ruins. All of these places are unique and many of them are stunning from an aesthetic angle. The way that Valak Mountain or Satoral Marsh at night make me feel when paired with the stunning locales and amazing music just give me this raw, primal, visceral reaction that I can only describe as being pure infatuation. Then there's the voice acting. I've said this before, but the characters really get into their roles in this game, and while not all of the performances are ultra serious and intense, they're always filled with a level of passion and charm that I think is unrivaled in most video games. A lot of the reason that Xenoblade is so highly regarded for his English VA by myself and many others is Adam Howden's lead role as Shulk. I firmly believe that he is the best voice actor in video game history, Never have I heard a man with such impassioned vocal inflections who can so effortlessly jump into a role like this. I love it, and honestly, I thank him for being one of the primary reasons that I fell in love with this game.
Fiora! It's me, Shulk! Fiora!
There's also the gameplay, and for this title being the pioneer of its unique style of real-time gameplay, it does it masterfully. Having a game where your reactions and movement are key, whilst also integrating traditional JRPG progression systems and gameplay mechanics is one thing, but making it feel satisfying and enjoyable is a whole nother thing. I'll never get over how good landing a well lined up buster or a good backslash or extending a solid chain attack is, or even how unique and distinct all of the characters feel to play. Each one feels like their own separate combat system, with Ryan's focus on tanking and massive physical damage, Dunban's Rambo one-man army kit, Charla's tactical healing capabilities, Melia's role as both a stat buffer and DPS mage, Ricky's quirky debuffing and DOT damage builds, and Fiora's flexibility based on an archetype you'd want her to fit into. Honestly, one of the main reasons I'm able to go back and play this game time and time again is the sheer amount of variety in gameplay styles I can have in subsequent playthroughs with many characters. Since I've beaten to death the things I love about this game at this point, I suppose for courtesy's sake, I should talk about some of the things that I can critique about the title, just so you guys know that I'm not blowing steam out of my ass. First and foremost, yes, topple locking is dumb. It's funny, but dumb, and it does make much of the game rather trivial. In terms of characters, I do wish that they had expanded upon Dixon as a character, both in his motivations and deeper connection to Shulk and Zanza. I do feel the general significance of his death at the end, and the plot twist is nice, but I wish that we knew more about him other than he just wanted to have the power of a god. Alvis is still kind of a deus ex machina, but his new deeper connection to the lore of the Xenoblade series and his role as was foreshadowed from the beginning does make him a little bit more than that. And despite some of these gripes, all of the strong story moments, writing, and choreography still carry this game and make it entertaining despite some of its shakier and least solid moments. The story and all that it's built upon is not perfect by any means, and I'm sure there are some kinks that I've missed in this review. But that doesn't take away from how complex and nuanced many of the narrative elements of this game are, and I think that goes as a testament to how meticulously crafted it is. With that said, let's talk about something a bit more sensitive and unrelated to video games. The philosophical and existential themes laden throughout Xenoblade Chronicles. It teaches us tales of the travesties of war. It shows us that these two sides, those on the Bionis and Mechonis, serve to fight their own interests, with beliefs of their own methods to live in peace. Our primary villains have complex motives that can allow us to empathize with them. Egil believed that the destruction of all life on Bionis would lead to the end of the suffering of the Machina. He acted in the best interests of his people. Even Zanza acted only to preserve his legacy, to never be forgotten as a deity by those who he created. A selfish goal, yes, but one that preys on a fear that many of us hold: being forgotten. As I mentioned before, the game's main moral theme revolves around the idea of fate versus free will, and near the end of the game our heroes make a rather bold claim, that they wish to live in a world with no gods, a world where their fate is their own. This is a statement that exists in direct opposition to the ideas laid out in early modern philosophy. In the philosophical treatise Ethics Demonstrated in Geometrical Order, written by Dutch philosopher Benedict Spinoza in the 17th century, Spinoza claims that God is the only substance that can exist or be conceived, and that whatever exists is in God, and nothing can exist or be conceived without God. He claims that we are all modes of God, therefore we exist as a part of that being. First, Zanza's view of being a sole being of creation and destruction, and his use of the hyentia as teletheia fully reflect this theme. Zanza believes himself to be one sole being of the world. He claims to be infinite, to know everything. Yet our heroes prevail and claim to live in a godless reality that remains separate of him and can create without his presence. This belief in a fate or destiny is intrinsically tied to the belief in a god. Many free will believers are those who often reject the notion of a deity, whereas those who follow fate believe a deity is in control of all of our actions. This game not only exposed me to this discussion 8 years ago, but also opened my eyes to many of the other themes this game itself touches upon. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of a will to power, or a will for power. He believed that human beings sought to hold a force that could give them authority over others, and that it was a driving force of our existence. He names it a passion rather than interpretation. This perfectly parallels both Dixon and Mumkar's motives in this game. They exist as representations of this theme. Dixon wanted the power of a god, and would do anything to attain his goal. Mumkar grew to love the power that his face body gave him, and acted purely upon that power. So what does our hero Shulk follow? Well, he seems to reflect the thinkings of a philosopher, Michel Foucault, who believed in the will to freedom, or the idea that freedom is the ontological condition of power. And as a result of having power, we're only motivated to behave a certain way because we're free to choose within a field of possibilities. Foucault believed in the idea of the care of the self. He believed that our own self-discipline would guide our ethical compass, and rather than follow a mantra, script, or guideline to live, we could choose to use power or not with our own judgment. Shulk spends his journey defying Zanza's calls for bloodlust and revenge. There are many times where he's given the opportunity to strike down those who have brought him nothing but pain and heartache, but he does not. Why? He's able to restrain himself and understands the greater implications of his actions. He's able to be given power and not use it in the face of uncertainty. He is the personification of Foucault's care of the self. Holy shit, it's 3 a.m. and I just realized I turned this review into a philosophy lesson. Okay, I'm out. Buy Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition.